समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Donald Trump, just hours after the Financial Times reported, was urging the European Union to impose a 100% tariff on both India and China, did yet another flip-flop. Now he took to Truth Social, his social media network of choice, to talk about how Prime Minister Modi was a very good friend and declared that trade talks between India and the United States of America that had stalled over 50% tariffs were all set to resume. Prime Minister Modi reciprocated with a message on both X and Truth Social. But the question remains, given the series of flip-flops and sort of inherent volatility in the Trump administration, how should India respond? The fact is that Trump's aides continue to lash out at India. You've had Peter Navarro, Trump's key trade advisor, refer to India and China and other BRICS nations as vampires most recently. In a moment from now, we'll be talking to celebrated economist Jeffrey Sachs. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. On the program today, we try and make sense of Trump's ever-changing mind. Donald Trump seems to say one thing one day, and its exact opposite the next day. Sometimes even a full day doesn't go by before Trump does a drastic U-turn. For instance, the Financial Times reported in the last few hours that Trump was urging the European Union to slap 100% tariff on India and China. This is something that key officials in the Trump administration have been saying as well. But then, moments later, came Trump's post declaring that trade talks between India and the United States of America have resumed. Prime Minister Modi, the twice that Trump has offered an olive branch, has reciprocated in tone and tenor. But there is disquiet within the Modi government. How much can Trump really be trusted? I think the trust is broken. But is it really on the mend? Or is it the images out of China, the power huddle between Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Prime Minister Modi that has really, in a sense, shifted the tone of Donald Trump? Either way, we simply do not know what's going to happen in the medium to long term. Even a week is too long to predict Donald Trump's response. I want to introduce on the program today our newsmaker today, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, celebrated economist, one of the world's leading public intellectuals, also, of course, at Columbia University, my alma mater, is with us. It is good to see you, Professor Sachs, as always. You have been urging India to not get arm twisted by the Trump administration. And India has, at least basis everything we know, stood her ground. I think Modi made a big statement by attending the SCO summit personally in China, that power huddle sending a message of its own. Now comes Trump's sudden declaration that trade talks between India and the US are all set to resume. How do you see this latest change of mind from Donald Trump?
I think the basics are very clear. The United States is an unstable and untrustworthy country, and it will remain so. Whatever Donald Trump says today, as you rightly pointed out, he could say tomorrow. The United States has the worst leadership and the most ignorance in people in senior positions that we've seen definitely in modern times. I would not play along with this. Donald Trump says Prime Minister Modi's my great friend. I would not play along with this. This is not a game. This is a very unstable country that I live in, and it's not a pleasant country. It is absolutely without the slightest interest in India, believe me. The spewing of the insults in the last few weeks is demonstration enough of that. I hope that Indian negotiators don't come running because Donald Trump is showing love. Of course, it's nothing like that. This is improvisation. And what India should be pursuing, of course, is a long term, stable course for India. What happened in Tianjin, China last week was very positive because it was a much more stable set of relations being built. I'm not saying that India needs to go out of its way to try to create trouble with the United States. But what I am saying is the United States is trouble for India. The United States wants to use India in many ways. It wants to use India as a cudgel against Russia. It wants to use India as a cudgel against China. But it has no interest in India's development or well-being. Believe me, I'm not speaking just about Donald Trump. I'm speaking about the American political class, the reality of my country, which is in the midst also of political turmoil that's going to last for many, many years.
That's a big statement, Professor Sachs, that there's one thinking in India that that the Indo-US relationship has to be saved from Donald Trump, that it goes well beyond Trump. You're actually saying that even if that were to be the case, the American political class as a whole, at least at this present moment, has no great interest in India. So all of those who talk about this great relationship, the bipartisan support for this strategic relationship, you don't buy that.
Relationship. Believe me, there is no long-term strategic relationship. Yes, there are people in the CIA and in the military-industrial complex that want to use India as a cudgel against China, no doubt. That is why you have people from the former administration like Jake Sullivan running over to say how wonderful India is. This is not about a U.S.-India relationship. I'm sorry to say. This is about an American political class fighting for its global hegemony as it declines and disappears, and flailing around as U.S. power is diminished to try to use anyone that it can at any time. I, of course, so much would like to see India's success. I, of course, would like to see stable relations between the US and India, but the United States is not a stable country right now. The United States is a country with enemies everywhere, with growing enemies everywhere. When it brings India into things like the Quad, my God, India should not be a party to this. It should not be a party to a blatant, flagrant attempt to use India against China. So this is my basic point. It goes well beyond the trade issues. But on trade, the United States is a protectionist country that in no way is going to allow India to replace China as a major part of the global value chain. The idea, the sweet talk that we don't like China, so India will be our new supplier. Please, this is not going to happen. America is protectionist, it is unstable, it is filled with idiots like Peter Navarro, who is nothing but a fool. But he's obviously a nasty fool. And there are many like that. This is an unstable, intemperate, unqualified, corrupt administration. But this is part of an American political process that hasn't worked for a long time. Of course, many in India were flattered by the special relationship. Many in India were flattered by the Quad. Many in India were seeing the great US-India relationship, which would give India this great boost for the next phase of India's development. Many were flattered by the relationship of President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. This is all very superficial show that means nothing for India's long-term strategy.
You know, when you say that India should not play along with this sudden olive branch, sudden hand extended by Trump, because he's not going to pause for even a second before he takes it back or backstab India while he's offering that hand of friendship, what would you expect India to do at this moment? You know, Trump says trade talks are resuming. We have a great relationship. The Prime Minister is my very good friend. The Prime Minister says, the Prime Minister doesn't make a personal comment on Trump, which is an interesting difference in their two comments. He just talks about the relationship between the two countries. When you say India should not play along, don't play along with this moment, what would you have India do instead?
I would have India be very measured. I would not build up any expectations. I would not play to any kind of flattery, which is absurd. Even this most recent statement of Trump comes, as you pointed out correctly, just a moment after Trump told Europe to impose 100% tariffs on India. Mm-hmm. This is just immature, blatantly illegal violations of international rules to begin with. And so a moment of a friendly tweet, or friendly on the surface, means nothing. Nothing. It's ridiculous. I mean, if you were watching 4-year-olds behave like this, you would maybe expect it. But this is a grown-up, supposedly. This is not normal behavior. I'm sorry. And this is not anything to be reacted against. Also, people should please understand what Donald Trump is doing with the tariffs is flagrantly unconstitutional in the United States. We've had 2 courts that have ruled that way. Our Supreme Court may hand Donald Trump the keys to the kingdom, and it may become a kingdom, in fact, with King Donald. We don't have a constitutional order right now. But that's what India is dealing with. So India should be rather, in my opinion, circumspect, not running anywhere, not saying joy of joys. Donald Trump claimed that India is dropping its tariffs to 0. Is that right? I doubt it. If it is right, it would be completely ununderstandable. So when Donald Trump speaks, he lies. Period. The man does not speak without lying, because this is the feeling of impunity right now, or simply irresponsibility. I'm very sorry to say these things. It's not a pleasure for me to say that my country is in a political crisis, but it's in a very big political crisis. It goes well beyond Donald Trump. It goes to the fact that our democracy doesn't really function. Our foreign policy is run for private interests and CIA and other interests. It is not run as on the surface in any event. So just be careful. India is our most populous country in the world, a great country. It should be very, very careful and not be yanked around by these incredibly juvenile statements coming out of what we used to call, it is the White House still, but we used to regard it as an institution of some seriousness.
On this claim by Trump that India is ready to cut tariffs to zero, I think that is just one of those big, wild Trump claims, because the Prime Minister Modi on record said that he was ready to pay a personal price if he had to, but he would not open the farming sector, the fishing sector, and the dairy sector and small entrepreneurs to the kind of demands that were being made. So that's the statement on record. Beyond that, we don't have the details, of course, of what the trade deal looks like, or trade deal in the making looks like. I want to come to the Quad. You seem to be suggesting that the Quad is something India should take this moment and just walk out of the Quad. I mean, we don't even know what the future of the Quad is, given the state of play between Trump and New Delhi.
The Quad is a very clear attempt to use India against China. The United States believes that China is the great enemy. I do not. I believe China is a very capable country, a very important country, but the United States has made it the enemy. Why? That is important for India to ask. The United States has made China the enemy because the United States assumes and asserts US global hegemony. Okay, if India wants that, I wouldn't, but that's what India signed up for in the Quad. That this is a clear, again, in my view, a completely naive instrument of US hegemony. If I were India, I would say, no, the US is not the hegemon. China's not the hegemon. There is no hegemon. There are several great powers, of which India is one, Russia is one, China is one, the United States is one. And the trash talking by one of them, that is the United States, against the others, should stop. That's the most basic point. We have one major power, the United States, which absolutely trash talks India, China, Russia, and Brazil, by the way, the BRICS partners. Is that the world that India signs up to? I would not. India went through a couple hundred years of that kind of trash talking and worse. And it should end. It should end with a world in which the major powers speak respectfully to each other, don't trash talk each other, don't make flimsy, absurd, juvenile statements from hour to hour. And India should not be part of a group, in my opinion, that is blatantly aimed against another major power.
Now, Professor Sachs, India has begun, and well before Trump's tariffs, the process of a cautious rapprochement with China. And hence, the Prime Minister's personal attending of that SCO summit in China was a big statement. But there are many people in India who have misgivings about, trust vis-a-vis China. And that is why India at this point perhaps feels that there aren't any great options. Multipolarity, strategic autonomy is the only option. There is serious concern on two fronts. One, we have had, we have thousands of troops, Indian and Chinese, eyeball to eyeball in the high Himalayas for the last 5 years now. Two, there is great concern about China's support to Pakistan, including in a recent military conflict, Operation Sindoor, between India and Pakistan. Perhaps that is why it has been tempting to look at the Quad as a forum that would also help protect India from an aggressive China that tends to support Pakistan. How do you see that? How do you see those concerns?
The United States will not and cannot protect India, period. And the United States has its relations with Pakistan too, very close relations with the Pakistan military. The idea that the United States is a bulwark for India is naive to the ultimate degree. India has concerns with China. They came from the British Empire as usual. the British made almost all the problems we face in this world. One of the problems we face in this world is that some mid-level person drew a line on a map in 1914 in the Himalayas to demarcate a boundary between India and China, where this person, McMahon, didn't visit, didn't know, had no basis, and created problems that need to be resolved bilaterally between India and China. My own view is that India and China are two great powers, two great civilizations. What I urge China to do is to welcome, in fact, press for India to join the UN Security Council as the sixth permanent member, which I regard as extremely important for the world, for India to be a member of the UN Security Council. And at the same time, for the two countries to solve this problem, which goes back to 1907 and 1914, when neither of them was in control of anything, because China was under the thumb of the imperialists in the 19th century. India was owned and operated by the British Empire. This problem between India and China goes back to that period. That's the irony. So the two sides, these two great powers that could provide so much stability for the world, so much rapid economic growth for the world, should be getting together in a mutually beneficial way, not regarding the United States as some kind of antidote or solution. The US provides no protection vis-a-vis Pakistan, and the US provides no protection vis-a-vis China. Believe me, this is something for India to work out as a great power, as the great power that it is.
So what you're saying is that India should not be used as the countervailing force to the rise of China by the Americans, because when push comes to shove, the Americans won't step in to protect India's interests vis-a-vis Pakistan or China. So it's best for India and China to work out their stuff.
Not only is it best for them, it's the only way, and it can work because there is a mutual, very important shared goal of India and China, and that is to make a stable, law-based, multipolar world. The United States doesn't have that idea in mind, but India and China have that idea in mind, and is constituting about 37% of the world population. The two of them can make that happen.
But the argument that America and India share more in common because of shared democratic values, that China is an opaque society that is highly centralized in the way power is wielded there, you don't buy that. You don't think there's more natural affinity between the American state and the Indian state than between India and China?
I don't even know whether the United States really has a functioning democracy right now. We are ruled by emergency decree far more than by law. Trump's tariffs did not come through legislation. They did not come through a vote of Congress, which under our Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, says is the responsibility of the Congress. They came from an emergency decree of the person you're showing, Donald Trump, who knows nothing, who's an ignoramus to begin with. But that's not democracy. So the whole thing is completely overblown. These are just empty words that we use. Right now, we have political instability in the United States, and we do not have a constitutional order. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping it will get fixed. I don't know whether it will or not.
You made the excellent point about how Americans have their own relationship with Pakistan, and historically that's always been the case. But there seems to be some very distinct new love between the Trump administration and Pakistan. And as often happens with Trump, and there's been some great American reporting on this, it could be to do with a business deal. There has been reporting that Trump's family is linked to a crypto council in Pakistan, and that may at least partially explain this sort of new bonding that's taking place between Pakistan's army-led regime and Donald Trump. How do you see it? I mean, why is Trump, who in his first term had a very different song about Pakistan, singing a different tune now?
First of all, there is completely uncontrolled corruption in the United States. This is a family business. It's friends in government. There's no sense of conflict of interest. It's not even a concept anymore in the United States. So it's completely out of control. What they're doing, I have no idea. But let me say that under the Biden administration also, there were close relations between the United States and the Pakistan military. And there are absolutely credible reports that I believe that it was the United States working with the Pakistan military that toppled the government of Imran Khan, for example, and got him in prison. We know how the U.S. Worked that, and to my mind, this shows that the U.S.-Pakistan relationship goes back a long way. It's a security state relationship. This is not security for India at all. This is the U.S. playing games. I don't like these games because I find them very immature and very dangerous, but it's games.
Let me, towards the end, ask you a couple of questions about economics. BRICS, there's been a lot of talk about de-dollarization and alternative currency. India hasn't said very much or nothing at all on this, but it seems to be Trump's great phobia. He talks a lot about it. How do you see this debate around an alternative currency to the dollar rising, in the years to come?
It's going to happen. It's going to happen relatively quickly over the next 10 years. Definitely the renminbi will become a major international currency. The rupee could become a major international currency. The dollar will lose its unique stature. That's why Trump rails against it, because it has been an exorbitant privilege of the United States, but the U.S. misused the privilege. It weaponized the dollar. It confiscated assets across the world. It uses the dollar to enforce its sanction regimes, as India knows full well. It tells banks in India and elsewhere, if you don't abide by King Donald's decrees, we cut you off from the SWIFT system. Well, there are alternatives. It would be absurd not to pursue alternative settlement systems. As an economist, I can tell you it's not even complicated to settle in other currencies. It was convenient when there was one currency of settlement because it gave everybody a level of extra efficiency, but the United States absolutely abused it. The U.S. as a declining hegemon or would-be hegemon or a delusion of global hegemony thinks that it can bully everybody around. And it then found, well, to do that bullying, it had to weaponize the dollar in the ways that I've described. That doesn't work because it's so easy to settle in other currencies. It's already happening. Within the BRICS, there's a lot of interest in moving to alternatives. India has been actually more resistant than other BRICS to that. That's a mistake. It's low cost to move to multiple currency settlements.
Finally, how do you see India's economic interests? What's the best way, according to you, to safeguard those economic interests, both vis-a-vis the United States and vis-a-vis China, where China's sort of domination, Chinese goods percolating deep into the Indian market is often seen to be a source of great concern, especially for traditional businesses, small and medium businesses here in India?
The two things I would say for India, three things. First, India has rapid growth, and that rapid growth will continue if economic policies are sound. India is in a period of dynamism, and that dynamism, in my view, can and should continue for the next quarter century at least. So that's the baseline. Second, the most important thing for India to do by far is to ensure that all the children get a good education, because that is the single most important key to India's long-term development. India has so much talent. Make sure you develop it across the board in all the places, rural and urban, across this diverse country. But that is most important. Then, when it comes to the international environment, diversify. China's not a threat. India-China trade would be a boom for both sides. India also should be trading a lot more with the neighboring countries in Southeast Asia, the ASEAN countries. India should be expanding its trade with Latin America and with Africa. The US market is modest. It's not the key for India, believe me. The fast-growing part of the world is the emerging economies. That is Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Trade, diversify trade. Do not view China as an enemy of the Indian economy. My own recommendation to India would be to join RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which intended to include India, should include India, currently includes China, Japan, Korea, the 10 ASEAN countries, Australia, and New Zealand. It's kind of crying out for India to join this, in my view. This would be very, very important, big markets for India, and a big source of increased access to all kinds of technologies, value chains, partnerships across Southern and Eastern Asia. And I think it would be a great source of diversification and dynamism. To look to the US market, which is very slow growing, maybe 10 to 12% of the world trade right now, and a declining share, that's looking backward rather than forward.
Well, that advice to join RCEP will trigger quite a big debate here. I do remember that it was being considered in a different time, and there was so much sort of political heat around it that it never took place. We leave it there. Professor Jeffrey Sachs, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Jeffrey Sachs, they're pulling no punches, urging India extreme caution on getting taken in by Trump's ever-swinging moods, and cautioning India that the United States will not come to India's side tomorrow should India need it, if it did not align with America's own very transactional interests. Thank you so much, Professor Sachs. Hope to connect with you again, and a good
Wonderful.
talk to you.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.